Welcome to the weekly album anniversary recap show. On this week's show, we're going to take a look at albums that we celebrated, or that I celebrated, from January 29th through February 4th. I'm your host, Caleb, or Caleb the Spy, on Twitter and Instagram. Every day on those social media sites, I post about what I call album anniversaries, and this is just the celebration of the album's release date. That's all it is. A couple years ago, I created a calendar and started to document the release dates of some of my favorite albums. And then I would celebrate those albums on that day. I might post something about them online or just take the opportunity to re-listen to the album. But in the last year, the list of my albums has grown significantly. And now I have every album I own tracked on my calendar, as well as a number of albums that other people have suggested. And with so many albums, I just have a limited amount of time and a limited number of characters. I don't always get to say everything I want to about the albums on Twitter. In fact, at this point, I barely say anything. I just kind of post the release date, maybe, what number album it was for the group, and that's about it. And so I started this podcast so that I could take some extra time to take a closer look at some of my favorite albums that I posted about this week. Occasionally, we'll talk about some news or just look at new music or other stuff like that. But mostly, we're here to talk about the album anniversaries. So let's jump in. The first album that we're going to talk about it's the big one from the week. It's an important one for me. And it is Dookie by Green Day, which was released in 1994 and is celebrating a 30-year anniversary. So a little bit of history about this album, as if you didn't know this already. It was their third album. It was their absolute breakout success album. This album was huge. It was everywhere, all over MTV, all over the radio. And you could not turn on the radio or MTV without hearing Basket Case or When I Came Around. Those are probably the two big ones, but tons of these songs ended up being singles or being at least played on the radio. It was a huge album. And for me personally, this was my first CD. I had bought tapes before, but this was my transition, and this was the first CD that I ever purchased. And I'll be honest, my parents were not super thrilled with it. Some of the content of this was not up their alley. So some of my quick thoughts on this album. Look, this is a classic album. It's just pop punk gold, or it probably is still, I would describe it as pop punk. It definitely is that. It's maybe not as poppy as some of the other things that would come after it, but it definitely is. It has a pop punk feel to it. Again, I've only really been into vinyl for the last year or so, and this was one of the ones that I was really excited to get on vinyl. I didn't get like the 30-year anniversary one. I didn't need all the extras. I just really wanted this album in particular, and I was really excited to get it. I was actually able to get it from my local library before I got it. So that's a whole other topic right there. And in my opinion, there isn't a bad song on this album. There's some lesser songs maybe, but there's nothing bad on this album. I can listen to this thing front to back, no problem. It's 39 minutes. It flies by. It's just a great listen. And, I think the singles were all really, really good. I think they were all really good choices. I don't know if Basket Case was the first one, but that is the first one I remember really being a breakout hit, really being something that was just everywhere. And for me, one of the other things that's really unique about this album is I cannot separate it from their Woodstock performance that year, where I think it was 94, where they're in the mud, they're having the mud fight with the fans. Just a great album and kind of a great moment. I know it kind of brought punk into the mainstream, which, some people would say is probably a bad thing. I don't really care. I enjoyed this album so much, and I still enjoy it. I was excited to listen to it this week. When I Come Around is still one of my favorite songs. I absolutely love that song, and I love this album. So that's Dookie by Green Day. Again, I don't feel like I have to say a ton about this album because, it's so well known. Everybody knows about this album. So instead, let's spend a little time talking about a much, much lesser known album, and that is Big Dog Small Fence, and is their self-titled release, Big Dog Small Fence. This came out somewhere, it's either 1998 or it was in February of 1999. I found a website that kind of had a bio about the group and some basic information, and it said February, I think 2nd of 1999.
my senior class staring back at me. All my friends ended up on the picnic. I must have made a mistake. Should have said something to somebody about the choices they were making and the things they could not see.
So yeah, this is definitely a lesser known of the ska bands, and this is one of those Christian ska bands. And again, I fancy the Christian ska bands. It's kind of become my thing a little bit. I feel like I'm often promoting those Christian ska bands, and they're fun. I love kind of having my fun connection to them, and this is a great one. I think this is actually one of those really underrated ones in a lot of ways. So a little bit about the band, and I'm just going to read this straight off that site that I should have noted, but I'm not good at this, so there you go. They were formed in 1994. The band was based in Los Angeles. Big Dog Small Fence created a style of all their own. Big Dog Small Fence mixes traditional ska with a great Motown groove and throws in some East LA Latin flavor. It says flavor. Ooh, that's gross. Big Dog Small Fence crosses all cultural barriers and creates a sound like the band Value Pack with horns. I don't know if I agree with that, but sure. And it features Bobby Duran, who would go on to play in PAX 217, which was, I think they had a couple pretty big hits, actually. So that's kind of the history behind this band. Just a little bit about them. Again, I believe it came out in 1999, so celebrating a 25-year anniversary. Not 100% sure, but we're going to go with that because it actually nailed it down a little. And for a lot of these 90s Christian bands and a lot of some of these lesser-known Christian ska bands, that's just what you have to do. You take the date you can find. And again, like I said, I think this is I think they're one of the underrated. If I'm rating my Christian ska bands, which is a whole other episode, it's Five Iron. It's Five Iron. It's the Supertones. Maybe the Dingies. The Dingies have probably moved into number 2 for me. So it's Five Iron. It's the Dingies. It's the Supertones. It's the Insiders. Insiders and Supertones can go either way. Those are your top 4. For me personally, Buck Enterprises was probably number 5. And then it's probably Big Dog Small Fence, and that's probably the W's. That's probably my top 6-ish or so. That's kind of how they break down, I guess. I clearly have not thought it through that much, but they're in that, that top 5, top 6 for me of the Christian ska bands that were out there. They only have this one album, although I did find they have a Bandcamp page, and in 2009 they released a remix of one of these songs and a couple other songs. That was totally a great find of the week. That was probably the highlight of the week for me to find just a little bit more music by this group. So let's talk about this album. It's their self-titled. The first 4 songs, they're great. Human, Finite, Joel's Song, and Ricky Fake are all just really, really great songs. There's only 10 songs on this, so it's pretty straightforward. It's 39 minutes, 10 songs. Get right to it. Circus Mirage is another great track from later in the album, and that song feels a little bit chaotic. I really like it. There's a variety of vocals. They have a female vocalist for a couple of songs, and then I think it's Joel. I don't know who the lead singer was. He doing some of the songs too. So a little back and forth. Shrimp Gumbo and Joel's Song, I think they're both instrumentals, and there's great. I like even like that. Again, that kind of a throwback to the Scotalites is just a cool thing. So I have a couple stories about this band, so I'm going to tell them because it's my show. Oh, Stand Tall and LA are great closers to this album. And the song LA in particular, I have kind of a funny song about that, is in high school, I had a friend who went to youth group with, and he was not a big music guy. He liked music, but he was just especially not into the punk and ska stuff that me and a lot of my friends were in. It just wasn't into that alternative stuff. It just wasn't really his thing, which is fine. But he heard the song LA, which is the closing track on this song, and he really liked that song. So he would play that song all the time. He would just put it on repeat over and over and over again as we drive around in his car that was totally falling apart. So whenever I hear that song, I can't help but think about Mike and think about that experience, because it's pretty funny to me that was a song that he kind of latched on to. The other funny story about this band, I only saw them once live in concert, and it was at Sunshine Festival, which was the outdoor Christian music festival in Minnesota at the time I was growing up. I don't think it's in Minnesota anymore. I don't even know if it's still going. I thought it was at one point, but they had relocated over to Wisconsin. Anyway, that is neither here nor there. So I did get to see them once in concert up here in Minnesota, even though they're from LA. And at that show, they were playing Ricky Fake as their last song. And I love these guys. So I had this album. I knew all the words to, I think, every single song. And I was up in the front row singing along. And I don't think they were supposed to do this, but they were like, hey, if you know the song, if you know the lyrics to this song, come on up here and sing with us. And so I ran forward to the stage, and there was a guy at the front who was like, no, you can't get on. And I was like, they just said, if you know this song, get on stage. And so he kind of looked at the band members, and they said, yeah, come on in. So I jumped on stage with them, and I actually sang along to this song on the song Ricky Fake. I sang that song on the stage with them. I didn't sing well, I know that, and probably ruined the song for everybody in the crowd. But, fun story getting to sing on stage with a band that you enjoy. So there you go. That's Big Dog Small Fence. Again, only really one release, although it's outside of this really small release on Bandcamp. So probably won't come up on the show again. So this is kind of their one shout out. And again, I'm glad that they're celebrating a 25-year anniversary because, we'll see how long this show lasts. So glad to talk about my weird Big Dog Small Fence stories. And that was a lot of time for one album. Oh, way more time. I know Dookie's the big one, but there you go. It's my show, and I love the Christian ska stuff. So there you go. Big Dog Small Fence. Shout out to them. Next, let's talk about Incubus's Crow Left. I think it's a Crow Left of the Murder, not Crow Left of the Murder. A Crow Left of the Murder from 2004. All right, so this is Incubus's fifth album, and they're this kind of interesting alt rock, kind of prog rock, kind of jazz rock. I don't know what you call them. This and the album before this, Morning View, are even the one before that, but Morning View and this are huge hits. I think they both go platinum. This is widely successful, and to some people, they actually kind of refer to those two albums as kind of their sellout albums. I could care less if that's what it was or not. I really don't care. I remember really enjoying this when it came out. I really thought this was fun to listen to. I remember listening to A Crow Left of the Murder, the actual song. It's track 2. Even though I don't think that was ever a single, it is what the album was named after. I remember listening to this while working on something in a coffee shop and just feeling like I listened to it over and over again. Just was really, really digging that song. And so I really enjoyed this when it came out. I don't think I have listened to much after this. I think I have one album, Little Grenades. I think that was their next one. And I just thought that was just okay. I really like this one. I really like Morning View, and I really like the one before it that I can't think of, the one with Drive on it. I can't think of the title of that one, but I really like this. Those 3 albums are enough for me. I will say this is long. It's a solid hour, and I think you can make the argument you could cut 4 songs, but they're kind of that art rock, and I think that's kind of what they're going for. And, I think the couple of the singles off this, Megalomaniac and I think Six Sad Little World, were both singles off this. I cannot remember, to be totally honest. But those are both great songs. I mentioned A Crow Left of the Murder, I think is really good. Pistola and Southern Girl are also, I think, good kind of standout tracks from this album. And, I think I like this idea of this band a lot. They're kind of this hard rock with the hip hop that's not overwhelming. They don't have any hip hop breakdowns, but they kind of have some of that feel to it with some of the bass and some of the kind of the programming that gets thrown in there. They've also got, a little bit of funk, a little bit of jazz. They're about as metal as I want to go. I don't want to get ton harder than this, and they're not metal. And as I was listening to this, I really feel like I'm going to go out and this is my hot take of the week. I don't have a hot take of the week, but I kind of feel like if you're a fan of Poor Old Lou, I could see this being kind of a connection or something that makes sense. Just that whole idea of they have these kind of groovy funk bass and drum feel to it. Maybe I'm crazy. I don't know, but that's kind of I was thinking about that and going, oh, that might be a good comparison on the Christian side of things. Poor Old Lou being, they don't have any of the hip hop stuff to any of their music, and they're not really all that metal. But some of that kind of I want to say funky bass work could be attributed to that. So there you go. That's some quick thoughts on A Crow Left of the Murder, which is celebrating 20 years. I think I said 10. Celebrating 20 years, and yeah, I enjoyed this album quite a bit. So that's it for that one. All right, so this is part of the show where those are kind of the three big ones that celebrated big anniversaries. There was at least one other one that celebrated a big anniversary, but I'm going to go a little faster through that. And I'll be honest, there was a lot I did not get to this week about posts, and that's probably going to be a theme as the number of posts go up. I've been busy at work, and so I haven't had a chance, and I've been listening to, sometimes I talk about what I've been listening to. I think that listening to that Big Dog Small Fence album and then finding that other one, and then a couple people kind of asked about my playlist because I bragged. This is a big brag. I bragged about the 1,000 songs I have in my Christian ska playlist, and so I've been kind of digging on that recently this week, and so I didn't listen to a ton of the other albums that I posted about. I tried to listen to some of them, so I am gonna skip some of them here. And I'm going to run down just other albums that had anniversaries, and not a ton of them, although I've talked a lot about a bunch of random things. So, I've wasted plenty of your time. So I'm still going to probably go at least a half hour. And just didn't get to everything this week. That's okay. So let's dive into a couple of those other ones. The Bill Gaither Trio, Because He Lives, came out in 1974. So that's celebrating 50 years is what it's celebrating. I had never heard this before, and so I don't know how it got on my calendar, but there it is. They released 3 albums in 1974. That's pretty impressive to go through 3 albums in a year. And yeah, this is aged. You can tell it's a 50-year-old contemporary Christian album. It's kind of the real vocal adult contemporary is what I would say it is. And yeah, there's some talking portions on this that were actually a little weird. The song Something Happened to Daddy is just a really odd song in a lot of ways. And, I probably won't listen to this, a ton. I think I listened to this right away in the morning, and I was kind of, it was lulling me a bit to sleep by the end of the listen. But, this sounds like the traditional what old people sing in Christmas. If you're going to make that or in church, if you're going to make that joke, that's kind of what it sounds like. I'm glad to have checked it out. It was interesting, and yeah, I think the song Because He Lives specifically has had quite the life. I think that song is still around and potentially being even sung in churches today. So that has a little bit of legs on it, so that's good. Let's talk about the 1991 greatest hits / singles collection from the Specials. I included this because this was and I was kind of getting back into two-tone ska and was kind of trying to find good places to dig in. This was a collection I went out and got, partially because it had a lot of good mix of their songs, but it also had Ghost Town, because a couple of their greatest hits don't have Ghost Town on it, and I think that's crazy talk because that is their biggest song. I would even go as far to say that this is one of the better greatest hits albums. This really captures a lot of things well. So I really enjoy that. So yeah, the Specials, the singles collection, it's a nice, easy one to find. 1991, I think it was re-released at some point. 2 different covers on it. And yeah, I love the Specials. So this was a great way to kind of get deeper into the Specials. Next, we'll talk about This Will Destroy You, their self-titled album, This Will Destroy You, from 2008. This is an instrumental album, and you probably best know it from Moneyball. The Mighty Rio Grande, I believe, was the song that was in Moneyball, and I think that's kind of where they became pretty well known from. In general, I think this is a great listen. Totally, absolutely a great listen. Great if you just want something on in the background. Absolutely great. So This Will Destroy You, their self-titled album. All right, and then let's talk about one more kind of deep cut on the CCM side. This isn't a deep cut. That was the wrong word. Kind of a historical look back on a CCM album. And we're going to talk about Michael W. Smith, The Big Picture. Came out in 1986. And, just to contrast this, I talked about the Twyla Paris album last time, which I think came out in 1993. Maybe 1994 or 1984. So this is right around that time, mid-80s. And I said about that one, it's just that adult contemporary stuff. Whoops, sorry. That adult contemporary stuff that I don't love. It doesn't hit me well. It's just okay. It's not even okay in a lot of ways for me. I find it pretty boring and dull. And I said if it was a little more poppy, if it had a little bit more 80s pop to it, I think I would enjoy it more. And this has that. And so I did. I enjoyed it more. I wouldn't go say it's great. For me, it was good. Nothing, I wasn't going to go back to it a ton unless it's kind of the anniversary. Again, this is another one. It is 51 minutes. And yeah, it was too long. I was done with it by the end. I definitely didn't need the full thing. Rocket Town feels special, but again, it has a Five Iron Frenzy connection in that it was covered by Brave Saint Saturn on their first album. And yeah, that's a fun song to hear both versions. I like both versions. So again, I think I nailed it yesterday with that early 80s CCM music. If it's going to have a nice pop feel, great. If it's just going to sound like adult contemporary, I'm out. It's just not going to be for me. You Belong Here is an album by a band now called Leagues, and it came out in 2013. I dig Thad Cockrell. He's got a new album, I think, coming out this year, and I like this with him with a band. It was really good. I enjoy it. I think they did one other album too, but a couple of really good songs on here. Magic is the one that comes to my mind, although I don't know if that's even my favorite, but that's the one that gets stuck in my head quite a bit. And I like Thad Cockrell. Anything by him, I'm going to be probably kind of interested in. I cannot believe how long I'm going. Oh man, I've taken up way too much of your time. And I still got a couple of them to talk about here. Well, this is good. I'll talk about how much time I'm taking up so I can take up more of your time. That's a good use of your time. Let's talk about the Prayer Chain, the Neverland Sessions, which was technically released in 1992. I'm a little hazy on the details on this because it was released on Bandcamp sometime not in 1992. So I'm just going to straight read you what it kind of has on Bandcamp. So this was the self-financed debut from the Prayer Chain, released in January of 1992, but they put this collection together in order to kind of capture what the first 2 years of the band was like, and you have a record of how things were before they were no longer independent. That's their words, and I think the first 10 songs on here are kind of these sessions, and then there's some demos on it as well. And yeah, the Prayer Chain are great. This is their Bandcamp page is a treasure trove of fun and interesting songs. Shine is on here. I think that was kind of their big hit before they put out Shawl, their first album, or their first real big album. Again, even tracking their history is a little tricky. Yeah, this is so good, and it's not as dark and depressing as their other stuff, but it's still really, really good, and it feels authentic. This is a great example of that, and I have in my notes, Twyla Paris. This verse Twyla Paris, what feels more authentic? And this does. And people may hate me for saying that, but this does. This just feels more authentic. And it was great. Yeah. Neverland Sessions, anything by the Prayer Chain, I would strongly recommend people check out their Bandcamp page. Again, go check it out. So this was kind of a weird collection, but there it is, 1992 technically, although I didn't get it till much, much later. All right, let's talk about another Christian ska band, and that is Send Out Scuds, their album, I think it's an EP, Sower Seed, which came out in 2008, and this kind of feels like the Aquabats. That's good. And yeah, it's good. It's enjoyable. It's Christian ska. I'm going to be all in, so go check that out. Yeah, you might as well. Let's talk about New Day Rising by Husker Du, and I don't have the year written down. I apologize. This is 122nd on my all-time favorite albums list, and this was their third album. It's the follow-up to Zen Arcade, and yeah, I like this more than Zen Arcade. It's a little less hardcore punk and a little more melodic, and I think it's a little more great. So, and I think Zen Arcade's a good album. So, but yeah, this is number 122 on my favorite albums list. Next, Don't Tell a Soul, 1989 release by The Replacements, or the two Minnesota bands, Minnesota alternative bands back to back. This was their second to last album, and it's good. It's got a couple really great songs on it, and the rest of it's just okay. But yeah, this was kind of they were on their way out by this point, but it's still a worthwhile listen, especially if you're Minnesotan and into alternative rock. You should really know Husker Du and The Replacements. Both those bands should just be stuff you are super familiar with. All right, let's talk about Vengeance Rising, Human Sacrifice from 1988. Okay, so the note on this one was that it is their first album, and it's the first Christian thrash death metal album ever. I don't know if that's true, but sure, let's go with it. And this is not my style. Again, I'm not into I'm not a huge heavy metal guy, but I feel like a lot of Christian alternative bands probably owe something to this. It's the cover art is kind of feels a little death metal-ish, and it's a controversial title. Whether I know that they were talking about there, it's meant to be talking about Jesus and that sort of sacrifice, but yeah, I feel like if you like alternative stuff, you probably owe something to this because it probably pushed the envelope. And yeah, so hats off to them. And it's got the song Receive Him on it. So again, one more Five Iron Frenzy connection. How many can I fit into a show where they're not actually on the show? That's 2 so far. Let's see what else I can do. 2011's Barton Hollow by the Civil Wars is next on our list. And this is an excellent piece of art. Whether you like this style or not, it is hard to say anything bad about the talent that these 2 individuals have. And, it's, again, not my usual style of music, but this is just so good. They're so talented. They hated each other so much. I don't know if that's totally true. They definitely had different visions for the band. Their breakup is messy and kind of disappointing because neither of them have gone on to do what those 2 albums that they did. Neither of them have matched that. So, all right, let's talk about Squad 5O's 2022 release, Solid Gold. Solid Gold Hits? Ooh, I think I have it written down wrong. I feel like this came out of nowhere. I don't think people saw this coming. There it was, 2022. Yeah, in fact, somebody didn't even know it existed. I tweeted about it today. It was yesterday. I don't know when it was. And they were like, oh, I've never even heard. I didn't even realize this existed. So I'm glad I introduced at least one person to it, which is good. First song's a little odd. I will say the piano feels a little out of place, but I really dig the song Lose My Mind. It's pretty short. I think it's 6 songs. If you liked Squad 5 in the 90s and 2000s, you should go listen to that album because I really enjoyed it. I don't love late Squad 5. I like when they're more the ska punk stuff, and I really like this album. So, all right, 2 more, and I'm going to go out of order here, well, out of my order. Not that you can see my notes. I could publish them, and you'd see how crazy I am. So Fleetwood Mac, Rumors in 1977. This is that breakup album, right? Like half the band had been together, and then they'd all broken up from each other, and then they went into the studio and were all mad at each other. So, it's good. It's a good listen. The Chain's a great song. There's a couple, Dreams is a really good song. I'm just trying to remember songs. I don't have it up in front of me. And what I'm a bit basic at times when it comes to rock and roll history, but I like Rolling Stone's 500 greatest albums of all time list. Not because I think it's right, because it's a great conversation starter. And what's interesting to me is their first incarnation of that list, which came out in 2003, had this album ranked at number 25, and then it went up. And then it was like number 26, I guess. I just went down. That was in 2012. It was down to number 26. But then it went up to number 7 in 2020. And it was also at number 7 when they redid the list in 2023. So that's kind of interesting to me that it jumped all the way up. But, great album. If you're into rock history, you need to listen to Rumors at some point. It's I think it is one of those albums that if you're going to call yourself a music fan, you got to check out Rumors at some point in your life. That there's a handful of them that I would say you have to. 1977, so a couple years older than me. Good. All right, last one we're going to talk about is the Menzingers and After the Party in 2007. And this is somewhere on my top 150 albums list. I didn't write it down. It's pretty high. It's definitely the highest Menzingers album. And I love the Menzingers. I've said it before. They've been on this show because they were on last year. They were one of my favorite albums of the year, even though it was in the top 10. And I love how they make you feel nostalgic for things that you never did. That is the best description I can give of them, is they kind of have this unique punk rock feel that makes you feel nostalgic. I've said it before, I feel nostalgic for drugs and partying, and I've never done drugs or partied. They totally make you feel that way. This is their best album, in my opinion. The first 6 songs are perfect. Absolutely perfect. Lookers, Midwest States, Bad Catholics, After the Party are all just great songs. And it just is they bring this perfect nostalgia to their music. So great stuff by the Menzingers. And I wish they'd get a little more back to that. I shouldn't say that. They can do whatever the crap they want. There were other albums that I just didn't get to this week. There was an album by Queen, by Phil Keaggy, The Offspring, Hippocampus, Amberlin, Bob Dylan, Broken Bells, Jeremy Menzinger. I really wish I could have mentioned that one. Another St. Paul, Minnesota guy. Less Than Jake, Vampire Weekend, and Local Natives all also had albums that I posted about and I put on my script to get to, and I just didn't get to them because I've been really, really busy. So yeah, that's the week of, I believe it was January 29th through February 4th. That's the week. So yeah, it was a good week. There's a week coming up, I will say, and I think I'm on vacation for it, where there's one day, and there are like four albums from 1999, and then another two from 2004. So both celebrating like 20 and then 25 year anniversaries. They're all great. That show is going to be a mess. It's going to be like an hour. I am so sorry. Hopefully it falls on vacation. I'll have to skip a week, and that's the week you all get to take off and don't have to listen to me ramble on, because I'm way over on time. Next week, I'm just going to mention some of the posts that I'll be putting out next week. Bad Brains, Fernando Ortega, Gwen Stacy, Bob Mould, Passion, Anchor and Braille. That's something that somebody else told me about, so it's on my list. Sorry if I messed it up. Steve Taylor and the Danielson family, the Foo Fighters, The Weeknd, Elvis Costello. There's been a lot of those. PFR, and I'm going to their show next week, a week from tomorrow. Yeah, a week from tomorrow. I'm going to be going to the PFR show in Minneapolis. Over the Rhine, Fall Out Boy, Link 80, Jay Dilla, The Autumn Film, Spanish Love Songs, The Selector, Bomb the Music Industry, Dinosaur Jr., Fair, Brian Fallon, The Smiths, Future Seems Forever. I probably will not get to that one. That's another one that somebody else has added to my calendar. The Wonder Years have their kind of compilation album, Big Thief, and I cannot say this, Descente. I should probably just cut this out entirely. They are a kind of a hardcore punk ska core band from, I want to say, Romania or the Ukraine, and they're on Bad Time Records. Their album came out. Those are some of the ones, but the big ones, and these are all from Saturday the 10th, which is really interesting. The ones that'll definitely, at least three of these, I'll talk about a couple of these on the show. Bob Dylan's The Times Are Changing celebrates, I think, 50, maybe even 60 years. Norah Jones's Feels Like Home. A band called Probot, which if you know what it is, you know what it is. And then Kanye West's College Dropout, I believe, celebrates that anniversary, a bigger anniversary. So those are all on Saturday the 10th. I don't know if I'll talk about those, but those are the four albums that celebrate a bigger anniversary next week. And I apologize. I was trying to keep the show short this week, and here I am rambling on. All right. So thanks so much for joining me. That's the week, and that's kind of a brief look ahead at next week. The music you hear at the beginning and the end of this show is the instrumental version of Sing It Out at Street Level by Peg and the Rejected. And that's the Dingies doing just focused on ska tunes. Their albums are good. You should go check them out on Bandcamp. Thanks so much for joining me this week. Let me know what you think. What did I get right? What did I get wrong? What were your favorites from this week? You can find me on Twitter at Caleb the Spy with no spaces. I'm also on Instagram, Caleb the Spy with underscores, and you can always email me at calebthespy at calebthespypodcast@gmail.com. No spaces or underscores. If there are albums that should be on my calendar, please let me know. If there's albums that are worth celebrating, we should get them on the calendar so we can celebrate them. Please subscribe and share the podcast if you're so inclined. Leave a rating or review. And most of all, again, I say it every week, but I really do mean it. Thanks if you engage with me at all on social media. I put a lot of time. I spent 2 hours today setting up posts, trying to get ahead, just getting things set up so I can tweet about them and put them on Instagram really quick. In fact, did I do today's on Instagram? I don't know if I did. But yeah, it takes time to set those up. Again, I spent about 2 hours. I'm trying to get ahead so I can take a week off and take a vacation. So I really do appreciate when people engage. It really is a highlight to, when I think it was a guy named Phil who said he had never even heard of that Squad 5-0 album. It was just really cool to have him reach out and say that he wanted to go check that out now. So thanks again if you listen to this show, any or all of it. I apologize if the audio is a little off. I'm still trying to figure out audio, still trying to learn how to podcast, even though I'm doing 2 of them now. And that's the other thing that's taking up a lot of my time, that other show, just trying to get that set up and ready to go. I said a lot this week. I don't know. Too late to be recording, probably. It's like 11:30. And I'm up by 5 usually, so not good at all. Let's see how long I can just ramble on. Let's see, did anybody, if you stayed till this end to hear me ramble on at the almost probably 40-minute mark, what is wrong with you? And you just tweet me, Caleb, there's something wrong with me. I'll know exactly what you're talking about. Thanks so much for listening, and I will talk to you next week.